Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back to another episode of Inspiring Possible. Today's going to be a solo one, so me and you's going to chitty chat for a little while. Well, I wish honestly we could chitty chat because who knows, maybe one day we'll make this call-in show. But the reality is, y'all, if you've never done a podcast before, this is the truth. You are having to talk to yourself. You know that you're talking to the person that's listening. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate all you that tune into this show, that follow it, that really listen. And hopefully this is providing some inspiration for your life and inspiring of the possibilities. Okay. But I'll never forget when I did the first episode of Inspiring Possible, and now we're 60 something in, right? A lot of those were solo episodes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird for me because I don't get to gauge a person's reaction. For a lot of my life and my life's work has been listening to people and engaging with them through a lot of times a therapy process, but in other ways as well. And so I love the dynamic of communication, of listening and hearing what someone's saying and then brainstorming with them or being able to reflect back what I'm hearing. And just the whole thing of collective lifts, togetherness, all the things, right? And so when you don't have somebody that's saying, hey, yeah, Christy, that makes sense, or I have a question about this, you are then doing this monologue, which is what these podcasts are. But it takes some getting used to. That's what I'm saying. Okay. But I'm glad that you still listen. Thank you. Thank you. I wish I could see what your questions were or who you were and where you're at in life, and if you would love, send me a direct message. I'd love to know more about you, who you are, what has drawn you to listening, what are the things that are stuck places in your life so I can help you move through that. But I just wanted to talk about that for 2 seconds, but that's not what we're talking about today. What today we are talking about is going to be about how can you have strategies to achieve more work-life harmony. And this comes from a recent presentation that I did for the Louisiana Young Professionals group in Natchitoches. They had a conference and a summit. And this is actually, I've talked on this a few times because a lot of people come to me and are really sometimes having a hard time finding the balance and finding I guess, I don't know, the counterbalance sometimes, the feeling of harmony between their work and life. And I was thinking about this a lot lately because I was talking to a friend who was just going through a lot of workplace stress. I mean, the work responsibilities they had were increasing with not so much the monetary compensation increasing. And there was actually not enough people to do the work. And I don't know if you've ever found yourself in this position where you feel like you're doing the work of 10 people. And maybe there was 10 people that did that work before, but now you're doing it. And, it's just not necessarily feeling like the return that you have. You're not getting the return on your time for all of the things that you are doing. And this can be super overwhelming, especially if you're in a not healthy work culture. And I don't know if anybody's experienced this. I hope you haven't, but there are sometimes work cultures out there that are just not the healthiest. Maybe leadership hasn't learned really good communication skills. Maybe there's other coworkers that create a lot of conflict and dissension in the workplace. I don't know what your work situation is, but I've heard all kind of things about different workplaces and work situations. And sometimes, guess what? For many of us, we spend a lot of hours in our life working. And look, some of us love our work. Some of us work to live and some of us live to work. I mean, whichever way you want to do it, it's okay. But a lot of times there can be a lot of meaning found in work. We can find a lot of meaning in work. But sometimes work can feel so overwhelming, along with life responsibilities, other responsibilities you have in life, that it can just seem hard to manage all these. So I thought it would be good for me to come on today and just talk a little bit about How can we find more success and happiness in our work? And how can we also, or in life in general, and what are some strategies to achieve more work life harmony? And a lot of this comes from my own story. So, when I was first starting out in the workplace, I actually started out waiting tables. Well, I mean, before that, I did like babysitting and I worked as a cashier as like at a grocery store for a hot second. But as soon as I turned 18, so this is adulting life, I went and became a server and I learned a lot of skills. I learned how to engage with people. I learned how to manage a lot of tasks at once. I learned how to problem solve, resolve conflict. I mean, you name it, I learned some things. And it was interesting because the restaurant industry, if you've ever been in it, has really interesting dynamics in their workplace. And it was actually kind of a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie, but there were also some times of conflict and all those things. But after I waited tables, when I was going to school, I finally got my big girl job after waiting tables for 5 years. And I was so excited about my big girl job. I was like, yes, I'm gonna go help people. It's gonna be so much fun. I can't wait. I'm gonna like have benefits and it's gonna be a real thing. Okay. And so what I found when I entered into my career, which is a lot around the helping profession. So I started off as a what they call child forensic interviewer, where I interviewed children that had allegations of abuse and neglect. And then I moved on to working with at-risk youth in the Youth Challenge program, which that's a really both are cool programs that really help a lot of kids. And then I did other things that required some leadership responsibilities. That was for home and community based settings for mental health. And it's crazy. As I'm doing all these things and I'm transitioning to these jobs, there were some challenges I faced as a professional and as just a human being trying to create this thing called work life balance. During this whole time, too, when I first got my first big girl job, I was then a mom of like a 1.5 year old. No, she was about one. No, she was 4 months old. I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun. But she was really little. So I had a baby. That's what I had at the time. And I was entering the big girl workforce. And as I was continuing to walk on this journey as a sole income earner for me and my daughter, there were a lot of challenges I faced. I wanted to do my best. I've always been one of those people that, like, you give me something, I want to do my best. Maybe you can resonate with this, which that can create a lot of high expectations of yourself that maybe actually not everybody has of you, but you have of yourself. And maybe I was taught to do things with integrity. And I'm glad for that. I'm glad that I was taught to like, you do your best no matter if nobody's looking. You show up. You do it for integrity purposes. And I'm glad that I learned that skill very early on. But the downside of that is that sometimes these expectations you have of yourself can be very hard to meet. A side note is I was watching the Netflix documentary about Simone Biles and I was just listening to her story. Now, the pressure that I had was not to the level of what I feel like she was facing, but she was talking about the hard facts of like, I'm not only having these pressure and expectations from everybody else, but the expectations I have on myself are much greater. And I'll be honest with you, working with people, I have found that people can have expectations of people, but a lot of times people are a lot harder on themselves and expect a lot more of themselves than even what other people expect from them. So I think that's one challenge that I faced in the workplace. The other thing that I faced was everything seemed urgent and felt like it needed to be done like yesterday. So if my boss came to me and they were like, Christy, I need you to do this thing, I'm like, but I had this other 10 things that I needed to do. Everything felt like it needed to get done yesterday. And sometimes that list would grow and grow, and I would never have time to get everything done. And that would create a lot of stress and overwhelm. Another thing that I faced as a professional was no boundaries or poor ones. Like if somebody was calling me late at night, I would sometimes answer it. I'll never forget I had a job and my daughter must have been like 2 or 3 at the time. And I was doing paperwork at home. Okay. And this is, guys, the days before you did work from home. This was like, I didn't get my work done and I didn't have time to do it. So I'm doing it at home. And I remember my daughter came up to me and she had to be 2 or 3 and she said, Mommy, you doing paperwork? And honestly, that was a big wake up call for me when she said that at that young of age to realize, man, I am really struggling with boundaries. I am not creating the best boundaries. I don't think I had as much of epiphany as I'm telling you now, but I realized that there was some boundaries and some poor ones. And the expectations I had on myself, I'll be honest with you, I looked in and there was nobody else doing to the same level that I think I was expecting of myself. And so I had really poor boundaries, poor boundaries. I'll never forget. Now, I was on call at this point in time that I was at a birthday celebration for myself. It was the weekend, and every now and then you'd be on call. And I don't think I was supposed to be on call, but I remember somebody called me late at night. And I found out later it was really not a crisis situation, but I answered the phone. You know what I mean? And so there's these experiences you have. And maybe you're thinking of some too, as I'm sure in some of my story, as somebody in the workplace that sometimes has trouble with just managing all the things for some of these reasons that I'm saying. And, one of my biggest things that I would say as a professional is one day I will. Okay. Like one day I'll take care of myself. One day I'll prioritize the relationships. One day I'll eat better. One day I'll do this. One day I'll go on that vacation. And one day I'll take a mental health day. I don't know. But that one day never came, and I find that that's some of the challenges that other people face in creating this work life harmony. I also think another problem is, we sometimes have this tug of war. We have heavy workloads, sometimes, even the positions that you might have, and a demanding schedule. And guess what, guys? That is a recipe for stress and burnout. I mean, heavy workloads, demanding schedule, also trying to do life, chronic stress is what I'm hearing there. Okay. And, I recently was watching some information about just the long term effects of chronic stress or consistent stress in life. And y'all, it ain't good. It ain't good. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. Go do some research on how chronic stress affects your health, and it's not a good trajectory. And so that's why I'm passionate about talking about this, because it's so easy to fall in the trap of, for some, maybe not all, of overworking and overstressing about responsibilities at work. Now, I'm not saying you should not take your job seriously. I find a lot of meaning in my work and I take it very seriously. Okay. Seriously, seriously. And I still love what I do. Some days it is stressful and overwhelming. So I'm not saying that it's not going to be stress free, but I am saying how can you cultivate prioritizing what's important in your life so that you can show up as your best self and you can set boundaries in the workplace. But we're going to get to that in a minute. Another thing that causes, I feel like, some of this overwhelm and stress in today's workplace, maybe not in yesterday's workplace, but in today's specifically, is this digital dilemma. I mean, we can have access to anybody at any time. Like, guys, I grew up in the time where they had them little corded phones, them corded phones. I'll never forget this, that I would like sit in my closet as a teenager and talk to my guy friends, you know what I'm saying? Them little people I had crushes on back in the day. And the cord would go into the closet. But somehow I guess I thought that people wouldn't find me or know that I was on the phone when they could pick up the other line and hear what I was saying. Okay. Which I know my brother eavesdropped on my conversation, brother, if you're listening to this. I know you was listening to some of my combos back in the day, but nowadays we have them things called cell phones. We have the things called emails. We have a whole different world. It's crazy to me. Like, if you wanted to send a letter back in the day, you had to type it up. I'll still remember I had typing class, and in typing class in high school, we had them old school dinosaurs typers, like, typewriters, them things that we had to get what is it called? The liquid paper, the eraser, we we didn't have no keyboards. I guess they didn't upgrade yet where I was going to high school at, but these blurred boundaries and this technology overload can make everything seem important now. In fact, I have to not look at stuff for whiles, periods of time. That's a boundary I put into place. Because if I look at something, I can't look away. If I read an email, I can't unsee it. If I saw something somebody messaged me about, I can't just forget that. And so sometimes that can create this dynamic where everything seems important now, which can contribute to poor time management and sometimes a lack of a prioritization. So it's hard for us to prioritize which tasks are important and everything seems important. And another challenge, we're talking about the challenges. I just want to clearly define this problem before we get to the solutions, okay? Is that, if you are somebody who is a go getter in your career and you're like, I want to kill it, well, there can be career pressures. And then you're also balancing that career pressures with personal life. And often this kind of ambition or this, like, I want to make this happen or I want to advance in my career in this way. And trust me, guys, if anybody could be a workaholic, it could be me. I always say my child saved me from workaholism. But, ambition is a real thing. But that can lead to neglected personal relationships and neglected self care. So when I do this presentation for people in real life, I ask them, what is your biggest challenge in creating harmony between work and life? And one of the biggest things that I get is boundaries and time. Okay. Two biggest things, boundaries and time. If I was to summarize it, okay. People feel like they don't have enough time. They don't do well managing their time and they have a hard time setting boundaries. So if we know that those are two of the struggles that most people face, then that's how we can figure out what do we need to do to address it. And why is this important? Why is creating this work-life harmony important? Because if you can figure this out, you are going to feel better overall. You're going to have overall better well-being. You actually are going to show up to work more productive. Okay. And you're going to have stronger relationships and more personal performance that you feel good about. So I created what is it called? The word is escaping me, but it's one of those things where you take the letters and you make something where people can remember, that thing. Okay. So I created a strategy for creating work-life harmony, and it's called CPR. Y'all gonna remember this because you know what helps save people when they're going down, that CPR. Okay. If y'all haven't done any CPR training, go get certified because you could save a life. But I think sometimes we need CPR for our work life balance, like for our life. And these are some things that I would suggest doing to help you continue to live. Okay. Well, and manage this work life stress. So, one of the things, the C stands for clarify. And y'all have heard me preach this on this podcast, clarify, clarify, clarify. Take a few moments. You can pause this recording, but just take a few minutes to get out a piece of paper. And I want you to write at the top of it, what is it I love and what is it I live for? What is it I love? What is it I live for? And give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to answer that question. What is it I love? What does I live for? So if you are listening right now and you want to do this exercise, push pause and then come back and push play. Okay. But it is very important to get clear on what's the most important to you in life. What does success mean to you? When are you the happiest? But answering those two questions, what is it I love and what is I live for, is vital. And let me tell you what I don't hear when we do this exercise in real life. I give people time to actually do this. I have yet to hear, and I've done this presentation maybe 3 times, that people really live for work. I've never heard that. I hear people living for their kids, their family, their creativity. They're wanting to motivate and inspire people. They want to develop the next generation. I mean, work can sound different. It can sound encouraging people or helping people or being creative. Nobody ever tells me specifically work. I never hear it. Okay. And so the reason why I want to point this out is because sometimes we can forget what is the priority in life. Let me repeat that again. Sometimes we forget what's most important to us because sometimes other people's priorities will sneak in. And our ambition for work is sometimes can overshadow what's most important for us in life. I feel very fortunate because I get to do stuff that I really love. I'm not saying it's not hard, but I really have found a sweet spot in life where I can do something that I feel passionate about. And I wish that for you too, but I know that's not for everybody. I know that doesn't happen all the time. So I think there is things you can do in your work to find a lot of meaning But at the end of the day, you need to be clear on what it is that's most important to you and focus on that. Bronnie Ware wrote a book, The Five Regrets of the Dying. I've never read it. I've just read The Five Regrets. Okay. And I can't even tell you what they are right now. But I can tell you one of them is I wish I wouldn't have worked as much. Imagine that, folks. That was one of them. So, again, finding that clarity on what's most important to you is really important to help just remind yourself. And so, actually, once we clarify, I told you it's CPR. The P stands for, I bet you can guess it, prioritize. So, what is most important? And this can be in work and in your personal life. And so, I'm not going to talk about time management strategies on here today, but it may be learning some time management strategies. I use a sticky note to prioritize tasks. I still haven't gotten super technical on this, but prioritizing tasks effectively, whether that be weekly or daily at work and in life, is super important. I used to do really good about this and I'd love to get back to it. But again, I'm human and I don't always do things consistently, even though I try to help y'all do things consistently on here. Taking some time on like a Sunday before your work starts or before your week starts. Some of y'all might work on the weekend, so I know this is maybe not for everybody, but pick a day of the week where you're looking a week ahead and prioritizing that week what's most important. And it might be like, oh, my child has this thing. I really want to prioritize that. Or we have something coming up this next weekend. I want to prioritize that. At work, it might be we have these tasks and I want to prioritize these. So just taking some time to figuring out what's most important for that day or that week can often help you gain that clarity to be able to create that harmony. And then sometimes it's setting boundaries on time. So you might be blocking out some time in your week that week to say, like, I really need to prioritize myself and I need to schedule it in because if I don't schedule it, it's not happening. You may say after 5 o'clock, I'm not taking any calls. I need to put some boundaries to protect my family time. If somebody came up to me and said, Christy, which we try not to have communications after hours because we want people to prioritize their stuff. But if they came to me and said, Christy, I need to prioritize my family right now, I get it. I'm going to be supportive of that because, I mean, look, sometimes we got to remember what's most important. So, setting boundaries on your time, setting boundaries around communication. So, maybe you're not accessible all the time via text. Maybe you have a cutoff time. I mean, but finding ways to set boundaries around that. Setting boundaries around with work in your life. You might say at this point in time, I'm not doing any work, or like I think about when my daughter was young. I really wish I would have done paperwork at a different time, not when she was around. So there might be boundaries that you want to create around your time and also boundaries around technology. Like if you're somebody who has email on your phone, maybe putting a time where it doesn't give you notifications, maybe turning off notifications. There's all different things that we have to sometimes put boundaries around, and technology is one of them so that it doesn't creep in and take over. Because I don't know about y'all, but I can get on Facebook and sometimes 20 minutes later, I can still be scrolling and be like, what the hell happened with the time? So, create boundaries for yourself around technology, for your life, for your health. And I think it can often go a long way. And also make time for your taking care of yourself. I mean, I can't say this enough. The more you take care of yourself, the more you're going to be able to run the race. I've never seen a runner, and I'm not a runner, but I think about these people that run marathons. Like they can't just run all day and not rehydrate or not, give themselves something, some kind of substance to keep going. Like you have to take care of yourself so that you can run the race. There's no other way around it. And so when you're running this race of life, you have to take care of yourself because once you burn out or once you snap or, I'm telling you mental health things, like you shove that down for a long time and you keep going and you're not taking care of it, it's going to come out someday, some way. Okay. And taking time to prioritize yourself can be a game changer and helping you do all the things that you wanted to show up and do in your life. So P, prioritize, set them boundaries, identify what's most important, and then hold those things that are most important like they are, I don't know, the most prized treasure on the earth, and protect those with boundaries as much as you can. All right, but that's just the C and the P, clarify and prioritize. The R is reflect. So I think there's a lot of power in reflection. We don't do it enough, folks. We don't do it enough, but reflection can really be a game changer. And that is to try to say what is essential for my happiness. What makes you happy is not going to want to make little Jimmy over here happy. Everybody's different. So sometimes it's learning to ask yourself, what fills me up? What energizes me? And take some time to reflect on that. So learn, obviously, I say obviously, it's not that obvious, but learn to evaluate expectations of yourself. Like, what am I expecting myself? What am I expecting of others? Take some time for reflection daily, weekly, monthly. Identify what you're grateful for. Gratitude goes a long way, folks, in well-being and happiness. Check your energy levels, figure out what you need, be reflective of where you're at in life. And sometimes focus on what's going right. We can always focus on the problems. I can get somebody to name some problems in a heartbeat, but sometimes I can't get people to name what's going right. And that is a practice. What went right today? What am I thankful for today? How am I feeling in life? Because the more you reflect, the more you can figure out what you want to change and maybe what you need to change and maybe what you need to set better boundaries around. So I'd encourage you to just use that reflection tool to reflect on, are you being able to live, not just work? Are you taking time for relationships? Are you learning new hobbies and interests? Are you engaging in self-care? And that reflection can really, that clarity, that prioritization, and that reflection can really help you create a better work-life harmony. So, what are the next steps? Just take some time. Ask, how are you doing in this area? How are you doing with work-life harmony? How are you feeling fulfilled? Like, are you fulfilling it in work and life, And then sometimes it is trying to do the CPR stuff and create like a work-life harmony plan where you can say, how am I going to be intentional about this? And then remember, practice some self-reflection and be flexible and adaptable when you need to. But I think really trying to figure out how can you live life in a more harmonious way that really works for you, don't have to work for everybody else, works for you, I think can reduce a lot of this stress and overwhelm and help you show up in the different areas of your life in a better way. So I hope you do a little bit CPR this weekend for yourself. Remember, nobody said when I got to the end of life, they wish they would have worked more. Okay. So find ways to prioritize what's important and find out what you need to do to protect your time and set those boundaries so that you can live a life you love. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.